It is simultaneously so healing and so heartwarming, and yet quite crushing, actually. Hi, I'm Sebastian, and today I'm going to be talking about Heartstopper. I literally just finished binging Heartstopper like last night, and I'm obsessed. I have lots of feelings, and I'm going to be talking about every single one of them in this video. Now, obviously, I will be spoiling all of Heartstopper season 1 on Netflix, so if you haven't seen it or you care about spoilers, I just go watch it. Go watch it. It's a brilliant show. You will fall in love. Watching this video before you've watched Heartstopper is a disservice to the show, the queer community, and quite honestly, just Mother Nature in general. Before I get into this too, I should just say that I haven't read the books. Don't come for me, okay? I need to learn how to read first before I can pick up the books. So I watched the series, but I do want to read the books at some point because this show is just that good that it's just made me want to read the books. But today I'm going to be talking about the series. Okay, so okay, don't come for me. Don't come for me. Don't come for me. Stop in the name of love. Don't come for me. I started hate watching this show. I started hate watching it because listen, I've been through Glee, I've been through Love, Simon, I've been through all of these shows and media that absolutely torture the psyche of a traumatized, I almost said Gleek, traumatized queer person who, astrologically, I have a Leo Venus and a Scorpio Mars. Okay, babes, I am the most like, when it comes to romance, when it comes to love, there is no one who like gets as invested as I do. Like, I'm sorry, y'all don't be loving the way that I do, okay? I'm not like other girls. I love so intensely. When it comes to romance and like, you know, things of the sensual, like, you know, relations, I just get so invested and so in it that it can be hard to watch shows like this or like get involved. You know, I have to go through like the 5 steps of like acceptance or whatever to be able to watch Heartstopper. And I'm not saying that as someone who's like homophobic. Like, I have to process my 5 stages of acceptance of homophobia to watch the show. I just have to process my own trauma as someone who, you know, I mean, very much like Charlie, you know, we're a bit insecure, aren't we? We're a bit insecure, we're a bit vulnerable, we're a bit insecure with our vulnerabilities, aren't we? And that's kind of like the vibe I'm getting from like people like my generation and up, in terms of like, we didn't have a lot of queer media, we didn't have a lot of queer representation, and we weren't allowed to really kind of like experience what Heartstopper is. You know, we never would have had our own Heartstopper in high school. Do you know what I mean, babes? Do you know what I mean? It took me a second to really be like, okay, I'll watch this show. I'll watch this show that all the gays are gagging over. And I know that I love it, but I need to just be a bit like, I was a bit sarcastic, a bit witty, a bit, you know, kind of, you know, giving those vibes. But I have come to really, really genuinely love this show without all of my Scorpio moon, because I also have a Scorpio moon too, because, you know, astrologically I'm just got the best placements. I do. I genuinely love this show. I'm invested in all of the characters. Well, I mean, not all the characters. We'll get to Harry, but all of the characters in this, you know, this multiverse, this whatever. I'm genuinely invested, and I'm here to talk about how I would die for all of these characters. So let's talk about Heartstopper. Heartstopper, right? So it's set in the UK, which was a bit of a gag for me because I thought it was, you know, I thought it was just like another, you know, American, because I have not read the books. I was not really, I was aware of Heartstopper, like the book series before, but I knew nothing about it. But it's set in the UK, UK, hun, Bing Bang Bong. I was going to say that it's set in the same universe that has Bing Bang Bong, but as if Bing Bang Bong doesn't exist just in our universe outside of like the UK. But anyway, learning that the show was British at first was a bit interesting, because I mean, you know, at first I was like, babes, we already have James on Derry Girls, like we already got the representation, we don't need British gays. But you know, I came to really love it. I do think that the British vibe, the British aesthetic really does kind of fit the show. I also did like hearing like year 10 and year 11. I'm in Australia, I live in Australia, I grew up in Australia. And we have years here too. We have, you know, year 7 through to 12 and whatever. And I loved hearing years instead of like, you know, I mean, what the even hell is a sophomore? Bitch, nobody knows. And also, just like the British architecture, I guess. Like, so my personal headcanon, okay, is that Charlie lives in the Papawute cul-de-sac set. I just think that there are too many similarities there, you know, because we're showing like the exterior. It's giving me that vibe. I think he just permanently lives there. But onto Charlie, okay. I am the president of the we will protect Charlie at all costs club. I am the president. No bad thing can ever happen to Charlie in this world. No bad thing can ever happen. Like, he's just so pure and hot. Like, the 456 times that Charlie said hi to Nick, the way he's, you know, he's just like very shyly kind of, you know, was like hi to Nick, melts my heart. All 456 times. Also, Charlie cuddling his soft toy in bed after kissing Nick for the first time, but then Nick kind of seemingly rejecting him, and him just like snuggling in bed with his, you know, plush toy. I was just like, adorable and also plushy representation. Plushy representation. I am Charlie's loving, supportive, adoptive aunt. I am. You know, I'm his Aunt May. Well, I'm his aunt, hey girl, hey. And by the way, I'm also married to Mr. Ajayi, so like, he's Charlie's other aunt, and so that makes me Aunt Hey Girl Hey Ajayi. So that's what I'm envisioning. I've seen that some people online have gotten mad at Charlie for the amount of times he's saying like, oh, you know, it's okay if you don't want to, don't worry, that sort of like kind of thing. And I'm just like, how do you not relate to that? We are getting okay if not representation. If you don't relate to that, then you are the ruling class, babes. You're the oppressor, babes. Like, I'm sorry, but that's on you if you can't relate to that. Like, if you are not a very like overly anxious, like kind of insecure person, then that's on you, and I think you should kind of sort that out. It's a bit embarrassing, you know. The one thing that I did think was missing from Heartstopper, the TV show, because it might be in the books, I don't know. I really did want a bit more backstory on both Charlie and Elle's bullying. I wanted the trauma. I wanted an episode 8 WandaVision moment, you know, where I wanted Catherine Hahn to come into the show and like kind of take Charlie and Elle through their trauma. Yeah, a bit of a therapy session in it. Like, I definitely do think that Charlie and Nick could have easily had a conversation where they talk about Charlie's bullying a bit more, because I mean, Charlie was literally outed and Elle had to like move schools because of the transphobia that she was experiencing. Like, these are things that we needed backstory on, I think. That was the one thing that I was like, otherwise it's a pretty flawless show and a pretty flawless arc for Charlie. Okay, so let's talk about Nick. Okay, let's talk about Nick, the golden retriever boy. You know, we stan Nick as well. I mean, my personal headcanon number 2 is that Nick can use chaos magic, because all of the times that like the animated kind of sparks were going around, I think that he's just, you know, he's Nick Maximoff, you know what I mean? He can just use a bit of magic here and there. So if he's in the multiverse of madness, I'm just saying, I told y'all. Nick's arc is interesting because I mean, how do I feel about coming out arcs in kind of teenage coming of age media? I don't know. A lot of it I had kind of seen before. I mean, it kind of did parallel to a lot of, I mean, talk about Scam, you know, Isaac Yaki in season 3, his and Evan's storyline in terms of like the coming out thing. I mean, like the thing with like the am I gay quiz or am I queer quiz, and like having the one girl who's like into you but you're not interested in them, and having like the bros friendship group. I mean, there was a lot of similarities, a lot of things that I'd seen before, but I did love that Nick is canonically, openly, on paper, loudly, proudly bisexual, because we don't see that a lot in media. Nick's bisexuality is like, it's just a fact, it's just openly stated. I mean, especially compared to some of the other, like, so compared to like Glee, that has raging biphobia, babes. Mega fuming biphobia.
Biphobia.
It was really good to see that be unchallenged, see that be presented with no negative tropes or anything like that. So that was really good. Also, Olivia Colman accepting Nick as bisexual made me cry. It was very, very wholesome and pure and heartwarming. What a privilege it would be to come out to Olivia Colman and have her say all the perfect, amazing things and just accept you. Okay, so let's talk about the besties. So Elle, love Elle, stan Elle, support Elle. Here for Elle. In the first few episodes, I did kind of find it easier to focus more on her compared to like Charlie and Nick or like the, you know, the other characters. Like, to me, I definitely think that Elle's one of those characters that really could kind of have her own spin-off thing, or like she could have easily been the main character of this kind of whole franchise, you know, series, whatever. I kind of would have liked to have seen more of her. I mean, again, I would have loved to know more about her backstory with like the bullying, how she fit in with like the Trum people, you know, that sort of stuff. I kind of do feel like I was left wanting more with Elle. Now Tao, interesting character. I am ultimately on board the Tao stan train, but there were some questionable things. First, let's talk about the haircut. Okay, babes, you were telling me that Tao is Charlie's token straight friend when he has that haircut. Like, babes, you are, the filmmakers are gaslighting me. You cannot tell me that he's a heterosexual with that haircut. Like, I'm sorry, it's not fitting in with the fantasy. It's not fitting in with reality. Tao's also kind of giving me a I look like a pencil kind of like vibes as well. Like it's kind of giving me like it's French realness, you know what I mean? I personally think they should have cast the actor who plays Claire to be Tao's parent, and with the it's French Bob. I think it just would have made sense. And very much like, you know, Alana and her mum in Broad City, like having just like weird personality quirks or weird character traits be genetic is like my favorite like trope in like TV show, cinema, whatever, ever. Tao's such an interesting character because I disagree with the way that he handles some of the things that happen in the first season. I think that he oversteps quite a few boundaries, like plural boundaries, multiple boundaries. I disagree with how his overprotectiveness kind of is perceived as him being a really good friend. Like Nick says that to him in the bowling alley, but I don't think that that warrants that. I mean, because here's the thing, I'm totally here for Tao's arc being about insecurities, about friends moving on, friends not being there for you kind of a vibes. Like I'm totally here for that, and I empathize with that, and I understand where he's coming from, but at the same time, he like meddles way too much, and not in a way that's like funny sitcom way, you know what I mean? And I mean that scene in like I think episode 3 or 4 where like Tao literally says to Elle like we have to prioritize our friendship over anything, we can't let anything come between our friendship, is a bit kind of like I don't want to say toxic by Britney Spears, but I do want to say it's a bit weird. I don't know how I feel about that. That kind of places an uncomfortable oomph onto Elle, do you know what I mean? Because it's not Elle's responsibility to always be there for Tao no matter what, to kind of put their friendship above anything else. I think that that's kind of an unfair onus to place onto Elle. But at the same time, I totally understand that feeling, and I've felt that feeling, and I'm pretty sure I've been Tao probably in certain situations. Because the thing is too, all these characters are like what, 15, 16, I think 14, 15, 16, right? These characters are young. When we're in high school, when we're teenagers, we're just repeating insecurities and behaviors that we've learned from our parents and we've seen around us in our environment, and just repeating that, regurgitating that. So like, I don't by any means like dislike Tao or like I'm not here for him. At the end of the day, Tao's one of the besties, and he's on the bestie team. So, you know, I support Tao. I mean, the thing is too though, that Tao is ultimately right in a lot of the cases in terms of like Nick's whole friendship group kind of, you know, being the ones who bullied Charlie, and Nick's whole friendship group is made up of, you know, people that bully Charlie or people that enable the bullying of Charlie. And so I totally see where he's coming from, and I do think that Tao's ultimately kind of proved right in a sense. And we can have a whole conversation about the whole cinema thing and the fiasco that occurred where like Nick didn't realize that Ben and Harry were going to be there, but then they showed up anyway. Even without Ben and Harry in the equation, that's still kind of a weird, unsafe environment for Charlie, and I think that Nick did a few things wrong in that regard. I mean, it's a whole web of like, of course, because, you know, Nick's still dealing with, you know, coming out and like being in the closet and whatever, so it's a whole web. So I mean, yeah, that. Editing Seb here, and I just want to say that when I filmed this, I didn't articulate the intricacies of this very well at all, and I didn't really wrap my thoughts up. Ultimately, Nick does do the right thing. In a sense, he comes out and stops making Charlie hide their relationship, and throughout everything he's shown that he massively regrets the very fact that Charlie has to hide the beginnings of their relationship. I am aware of and hold empathy for Nick's own journey in coming out, and absolutely do not suggest or imply that he should be forced out of the closet just to please Charlie. On the other hand though, I won't act like Charlie having to hide yet another significant romantic connection doesn't have some negative consequences, mostly on Charlie's own self-image and mental well-being, as we see predominantly in episodes 7 and 8. This is then compounded by Nick's predominant friendship group being comprised of Charlie's bullies and enablers/bystanders. This is the crux of my issue, that Nick is trying to integrate Charlie into his life under the pretense of him just being a friend, without fundamentally changing the people and the spaces in his life where there is active homophobia. Without changing this, Charlie will always end up getting hurt in some form or another. But Nick ultimately does right this wrong, and my issue isn't a prolonged one. It only takes up 1 or 2 episodes worth, but it was just something that I noticed and thought was worth mentioning. What makes Nick a good person is that he is aware of the unfortunate situation both his closeted status and his homophobic friendship group place onto Charlie, and once he has sorted out his own repressed queerness, he does begin to act and does eventually make things right. And my inclusion of Tao in this conversation was to merely suggest that Tao isn't necessarily wrong for a certain period of time, because again, Charlie is kind of the unfortunate collateral of this whole web of intricacies, but again, Nick proves Tao wrong. Tara and Darcy, I kind of want them to have their own show. Like again, I think Elle And then Tara and Darcy could easily have been the main character of this show, or the main characters of this show. Now, I'm not taking that away from Charlie, because again, I will die for Charlie. I will protect Charlie with my life. But I do think that, at least initially, I did find that Elle and Tara and Darcy were kind of more interesting from the get-go. They kind of captured my I almost said precuntal. They captured my precuntal vortexes. What am I talking about? Labia minora? No. What's the prefrontal cortex? Is that what it's called? They captured my attention, babes, and I was in it to win it. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. I was ready to go. And can we talk about them kissing at the party? I think Harry's party. Oh my god, I think the biggest slay of this show was Tara and Darcy kissing at Harry's party. The biggest slay. The biggest slay. It was like Scam, Call Your Girlfriend, but like on crack. It was like the colors, the beat drop in the music, the cinematography, it was just all at like a 100 out of 10. I think that for me was when I switched, where I was like, okay, I'm genuinely invested in this show. This is genuinely like a good show. Oh, I love it. And can we just talk about like the actors as well for like Darcy and Tara? Like, I think, is it Corinne? Legend of Korra, who plays Tara. Like, acting chops, babes, acting chops for days. That scene where Tara is crying in the practice room, you know, just before the concert is, oh my god, the best, probably some of the best acting chops of the whole series. I was very, very moved by that. Okay, and finally we have Isaac of the besties, and I mean, Isaac deserved better. He had like a total of 30 seconds of screen time in the whole show. I don't know if there were like other scenes that they filmed that got cut or something. Does Isaac even exist in like the books? I from like a quick Google search, I don't think, it doesn't look like he exists in the books. They either changed his name, or like he was made up from like another character, or just completely a new character that isn't in the books. But yeah, I like Isaac. I wish, you know, he's like a first out. I'm thinking about my Drag Race videos. He's a first out queen. Oh, poor Isaac. But hopefully we see more of him in the future seasons. Now we're going to talk about the worsties. Harry is just the epitome of yuck. Gross, gross, gross. But also perfect casting, because I mean, every queer person who has ever gone to high school ever has had someone who looks like Harry bully them. Full stop. Like, that's, you know, mic drop. Damn, that's kind of fire. And I'm not even a liar. Babes, when's the mixtape coming? When's the mixtape coming? Perfect casting on that. Yeah, because I mean, we don't stan Harry. And then we've got Ben. And I mean, we stan the actor, because apparently he's like a sweetheart or something. I've watched some interviews post Heart, but I mean, I literally watched it yesterday, you know, finished watching it yesterday. So, you know, I'm not all caught up, but apparently he's a sweetheart, he's a babe, he's a bestie. The actor's a bestie. Actor's also Sebastian. Oh my god. Sebastian, if you're watching, hiya babs, it's me, Sebastian too. The way that I just kind of like plagiarized Ginny Lemon kind of just casually all the time. Anyway, Ginny Lemon, if you're watching, hiya babs, fancy a slice. But the character of Ben, prison, jail, like, you know, indefinite incarceration in the McDonald's, you know, ball pit. We do not stand. I also love that the show doesn't attempt to redeem either Harry or Ben. Like, they are the villains of the story, and that's okay. As much as I do think both Ben and Harry should be incarcerated, like, at the end of the day, like, they're just regurgitating probably their parents' homophobia. A redemption arc isn't completely out of the picture. But I mean, for this installment of Heartstopper, completely, you know, it was a smart move not to give them a redemption arc. We do not need an Adam and Eric storyline from Sex Education. We do not, oh my god, babes, we do not need that. But you know, like, a redemption arc could definitely be available for like Ben, I think, in particular, because his homophobia is linked to his very, very repressed internal kind of own closeted queerness. But you know, that's for like a future All-Stars, babes. You know, he needs to be redeemed on a future All-Stars, but not this. Totally happy that he's the villain of this story, and that's okay. Like, this particular narrative is about Charlie and Nick, and the other besties as well, but you know, about Charlie and Nick. It would have been unfair, I think, to kind of give them that redemption, because it wouldn't have been earned, especially because, you know, they were still doing the bullions up until episode 7, episode 8. I mean, you know, I think about that in the same sort of, in another strand of the multiverse, there is a spin-off or like a future all-star season of Heartstopper where Coach Singh is the main character and her kind of struggle to completely fill a rugby team with rugby players for the inter-school sports team. Like I definitely do see that as like it's very much in that sort of a vein. Okay, we need to have a conversation though about sport, because this show forced me to watch sport against my will, and I'm not happy with that. I'm not a happy Seb. I'm very much on Charlie's team of like, no gay person has ever played sports ever. No, that doesn't exist. That doesn't fit in with my fantasy, do you know what I mean? This show is not coming anywhere near the cultural reset that was Single Ladies on Glee. Also, Thriller Heads Will Roll, but also the game in Thriller Heads Will Roll where Tina Cohen-Chang like single-handedly won the game for the McKinley team. She did. I mean, she didn't really in reality, but like in my mind she did, you know what I mean? Like, why would Heartstopper make me watch sport if they can't even, there's no way they're even gonna top like Single Ladies or Thriller Heads Will Roll. Like, that was, you know, one of my beefs with the show. Okay, am I the only one who thinks that Tori deserves their own show? Like Charlie's older sister, Tori? I thought that she was so slay. Like, she'd literally just like be like in 2 seconds of an episode, pop up with her little drinky in her hand and be like, you know, Charlie, you look very gay today. And then just like pop off. I think that's so slay, so girl boss. That's what I need more of. Like, when does she get her own show? When does she get her own season? Can this be like Scam, where we focus on a different main character each season and Tori is the next one? Like, I'm just saying, Tori, 6 seasons and a show when? Do you know what I mean? I really enjoy this show. I mean, I resonate with Charlie so much, like being the you know, out gay kid at your school, being kind of like a bit of a dorky nerd, having like self-isolation, and not in a COVID way, just in like a depression way, as like your go-to coping mechanism. And just like, there's so many ways that I just kind of relate to Charlie, especially with my own high school experience. What's interesting to me is that Charlie's main arc is about learning and accepting that he is worthy of love, right? And because we see that when he starts to isolate himself from his friends, from Nick, from everyone, and you know, Mr. Ajayi says that, you know, don't let other people make you disappear, Charlie, and stuff. And like we see that in the first episode with Ben, where Ben can't even, you know, not only does Ben not want to be seen out in public with Charlie, he actively ignores him, belittles him, and kind of bullies him too. And I love the way that this is interwoven with Nick's main arc of figuring out who he is and not who he's supposed to be. Like, it's just like such a chef's kiss, like the way that they're interwoven. Like, Charlie needs Nick to affirm that he is worthy of love, but Nick needs Charlie to inspire him to be his true authentic self, unburdened by toxic masculinity and, you know, heteronormativity. They can't exist without the other, the way that they need each other, you know what I mean? And I love that there are so many different kind of expressions and examples of queer love and of queer people in this show, because a lot of people resonate with Nick, a lot of people resonate with Tao, with Elle, with Darcy and Tara. You know, there are so many different opportunities for all of us to kind of like look at this show and watch it and kind of be like, oh my god, that's me. For me, that's Charlie, because, you know, I've kind of known that I was queer since forever, you know, but like, I mean, I came out to my mum when I was like 9 or 10. I was kind of in the closet to my friends and the rest of my family for like a bit, but like in high school, I was that kid where I was the openly gay kid for like, you know, the second half of like my high school experience. But yeah, it's been so interesting kind of seeing the reaction to Heartstopper, because I think a lot of people are kind of in my boat too, where some of us were out in high school, but we weren't able to experience what Charlie and Nick experienced. When I had one of several crushes on, you know, the jock types in my high school, that was unrequited. That never really went anywhere, and it was never really affirmed or validated by the other party. Like, I was kind of just like stuck in that kind of role of like, I'm the openly gay kid, and but I don't get to experience any of that kind of like young teenage love. Seeing Charlie in the show not only have his crush be reciprocated, but be this kind of really profoundly moving piece of art, it is simultaneously so healing and so heartwarming, and yet quite crushing, actually. It's this juxtaposition that I think me and like a lot of people in my position feel, where it's bittersweet, because I never got to have that in high school. I never got to have that kind of high school love, and I think that there'll always be a part of me that's kind of a little bit sad that I never got to experience that. That's the bitter part of the bittersweetness of it. And the thing is too, was that I felt all of the isolation, all of the depression, all of those feelings and insecurities that Charlie felt, but I didn't have someone like Nick to kind of validate them and affirm them. I kind of had to just do that myself, and like we can have a whole conversation about how that's made me stronger or more resilient, but it's also just like kind of like a little bit saddening to kind of watch that. Obviously, I was very privileged in that I was allowed to be out in high school and not really have many negative consequences, fortunately. Much older generations than me weren't able to experience that at all. So, you know, I mean, there are layers to this, but it's such a conflict of emotions. Like, the best way I can put it is that it's the intense, close friendship to romantic crush pipeline that, for me, never really ended it up in anything. You know, it ended in divorce, babes, divorce, to, you know, quote the legendary Adele. But for Nick and Charlie, it ended in a happy ever after. But on the flip side, and it's a massive flip side, seeing such expressions of queer joy, queer love, queer support, queer optimism is so heartwarming. The crushing feeling that I feel of not being able to experience that myself is like one drop in a lake of just like joy and like happy tears of like, we get to see so many examples of like queer people being loved and being happy and being in love in this show, and that's so amazing. One of my favorite scenes in all of Heartstopper is when Charlie and Nick kissed for the first time, and Charlie's back at school having just had that, and he has the biggest grin on his face as he's walking through the hallways, and it is just so wholesome. Like, that's endlessly moving to me. That is endlessly moving. And once again, I will protect Charlie at all costs. I'm the president of the We Will Protect Charlie Club, and he will be protected no matter what. I just realized that I forgot to talk about Imogen. Yeah, I mean, look, babes, her asking Nick out in front of all of their friends, but especially all of his bro friends, was kind of a weird vibe. I don't like that. Like, babes, when I had a crush on the hottest jock in my year level in year 10, I waited until after orchestra practice, and I waited for when it was just the two of us for him to reject me. Like, babes, that's just how you do it. That's just how you do it, okay? Like, I don't understand how Imogen wasn't embarrassed. Like, if I had have gone up to hot jock in my year level in front of all his friends and like asked him out. Obviously, this is different because I'm queer and, you know, but oh my god, babes, the secondhand embarrassment, it is real. But I mean, that being said, okay, I also had the very unsettling realization halfway through that out of all of these characters in Heartstopper, the one whose experience in high school probably mirrors my experience the most is probably Imogen. Oh my god, I mean, because of just like that unrequited crush sort of a thing. I mean, because in this, you know, queer utopia where all of the gays kind of get together, I'm Imogen in that, like, you know, the boy that I like doesn't like me back. Oh my god, that was so crushing. I mean, like, that was kind of sad. But I mean, like, in terms of like characters that I relate to, obviously Charlie though. Obviously Charlie with like a bit of Darcy, and also like a dash of Tao as well, maybe a bit of Elle as well. But I mean, in terms of like realistic high school experiences, I'm like totally Imogen. Oh my god. Imogen and I can be besties. We'll be besties. But yeah, those are all of my opinions on Heartstopper. I love this show. I definitely came into this show with a bit of a hard exterior, because I mean, that's, you know, when you are a queer person who was denied pure wholesome romantic love in high school, you just have a bit of that. You have that, you know, thing on, what's it, a thing on your shoulder? Plank on your shoulder? No. Chip on your shoulder. You have that chip on your shoulder. You have a bag of chips on your shoulder. It's gonna make me feel all the feelings and be invested in something that I was denied, that I'm a little bit jealous of. But I got over that. Well, not really, because I'm still talking about it. But, you know, putting that aside, this is a beautiful show. I'm looking forward to Heartstopper, the rest of the seasons that are going to come out. You know, please be like another 29 seasons. Can't wait to read the books as well. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought of Heartstopper, what you thought of my opinions. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Are you like really angry that I didn't like that Tao was a bit off sometimes in the way that he approached things? Are you really angry? Are you going to comment that down below? Anyways, I hope you all have a very slay week, and I will see you in the next video.